Diana, do you start?
Po.
Uh,
Examples of offsetting. First, gains and losses on disposal of non-current assets are reported by deducting from the proceeds the carrying amount of the assets and the related selling expenses. Next, expenditure related to a provision and reimbursed under a contractual arrangement with a third party may be netted against the related reimbursement. In other words, the expenditure related to a provision and any reimbursement from a third party can be offset, and only the net expenditure is presented as expense. In addition, gains and losses arising from a group of similar transactions are reported on a net basis. For example, foreign exchange gains and losses or gains and losses arising from trading securities are netted against the other. Ang foreign exchange ay trading of currencies which is similar transaction sa trading securities. However, if material, such gains and losses are reported separately. The measurement of assets net of valuation allowance is permitted because technically this is not offsetting kasi minimeasure pa lang naman. Thus, accounts receivable may be shown net of allowance for doubtful accounts. Magiging offset lang siya kapag credit na yung allowance for doubtful accounts sa bad debt expense. Frequency of reporting. An entity shall present a complete set of financial statements at least annually. It means every year. When an entity changes the end of the reporting period and presents financial statements for a period longer or shorter than 1 year, the entity shall disclose the period covered by the financial statements, the reason for using a longer or shorter period, and the fact that amounts presented in the financial statements are not entirely comparable. Comparable information, except when permitted or required otherwise by PFRS, an entity shall disclose comparative information in respect of the previous period for all amounts reported in the current period's financial statements. In other words, the financial statements of the current period shall be presented with comparative figures of the financial statements of the immediately preceding year. Nakalagay dapat sa current period's financial statements ang comparative information noong nakaraang taon. Comparative information shall be included for narrative and descriptive information when it is relevant to an understanding of the current period's financial statements. Yung mga comparative information mula sa financial statements noong nakaraang taon ay may kaugnayan pa rin sa financial statements ngayon. For example, details of legal dispute, the outcome of which was uncertain at the end of the preceding reporting period and is yet to be resolved, are disclosed in the current period. Users shall benefit from information that an uncertainty existed at the end of the immediately preceding reporting period, and steps have been taken during the current period to resolve the uncertainty. Third statement of financial position. A third statement of financial position is required when an entity A applies an accounting policy retrospectively, meaning apply a new accounting policy as if it was always applied. B makes retrospective restatement of items in the financial statements. Retrospective restatement happen when there's a change in reporting entity, correcting the recognition, measurement, and disclosure of amounts as if prior error had never occurred. C reclassifies items in the financial statements. Under these circumstances, an entity shall present three statements of financial position as at the end of the current period, the end of the previous period, and the beginning of the earliest comparative period. Consistency of presentation. Implicit in the presentation or comparable information is the principle of consistency. The principle of consistency requires that the accounting methods and practices shall be applied on a uniform basis from period to period. The presentation and classification of financial statements items shall be uniform from one accounting period to the next. An entity cannot use the FIFO method of inventory valuation in 1 year, the average method in the next year, another method in the succeeding year, and so on. The FIFO method is adopted in 1 year. Such method is followed from year to year. Dapat kung ano yung ginamit mong method ngayong year, yun din yung gagamitin mo sa mga susunod na taon. Consistency is desirable and essential to achieve comparability of financial statements. Mahalaga ang consistency para mapag-compare ang mga financial statements. However, consistency does not mean that no change in accounting method can be made. If the change will result to information that is faithfully represented and more relevant to the users of financial statements, then such change should be made. But but there should be full disclosure of the change and the peso effect of the change. A change in the presentation and classification of items in the financial statements is allowed when it is required by another PFRS or when a significant change in the nature of the operations of the entity will demonstrate a more appropriate revised presentation and classification. It is inappropriate for an entity to leave accounting policies unchanged when better and acceptable alternatives exist.
Okay. Okay.
Identification of financial statements. Financial statements shall be clearly identified and distinguished from other information in the same published document. Each component of the financial statement shall be clearly identified. In addition, the following information shall be prominently displayed: A. The name of the reporting entity. B. Whether the financial statements cover the individual entity or a group of entities. C. The end of the reporting period or the period covered by the financial statements or notes. D. The presentation currency. E. The level of rounding used in the amounts in the financial statements. Financial statements are often made more understandable by presenting information in thousands or millions of units of the presentation currency. This is acceptable as long as the level of rounding in presentation is disclosed and relevant and material information is not lost or omitted.
Okay. So there. Now, there is that portion there mentioning fiscal year, right? Fiscal year of reporting and business operation. Now, per Balix, ano? Para kay Balix. Okay. Pag sinabing fiscal year, 12 months yon. Okay, according to Balix. Pag sinabing fiscal year, 12 months. Dalawang klase ang fiscal year, ano ha? Dalawang klase. Kung yung iyong business cycle and reporting period, January 1 to December 31, sabi ni Balix, okay, that is a fiscal period, but in particular, kasi January 1 to December 31, you call that calendar year. Calendar year. Now, alam naman natin hindi lahat ang normal business cycle ay from January 1 to December 31. Tulad ng mga schools, ano? May mga schools, marami nagsisimula ang kanilang ang business operating cycle and the accounting period hindi January 1. August, marahil, August. And ending after 12 months. So, sa kanila, iba ang fiscal year. O fiscal year ang tawag. Kaya lang hindi calendar year. Ang tawag nila ay fiscal year na normal business cycle period. Hindi calendar. So, per Valix, lahat yan, fiscal year. Kaya lang dalawang klase. It's either calendar year or normal business cycle year, ano? Now, there is that mention also of the word rounding, ano? Rounding. Now, ang financial statements, hindi naman tatanggapin yan ng BIR kasama yung iyong income tax return kung hindi yan audited ng CPA, ano, para tanggapin ng BIR ang iyong financial statements, it must be audited. Pati Securities and Exchange Commission, dapat ang financial statements mo audited. Now, it is usual na yung accounting, internal accounting ng isang business entity, nag-account sila up to the nearest centavo, no? Lalo na ang bangko. Lalo na ang bangko. Tapos, ang isasubmit mo sa SEC at BIR, ay financial statements na rounded to the nearest peso, no? Wala na yung mga centavos. Rounded to the nearest peso. Kung ang rounding mo is to the nearest peso, okay? So, makikita nyo yung mga audited financial statements na pinay sa BIR, SEC, up to the nearest peso. Most of them, ano? Wala na yung mga centavos. Pero sa internal accounting ng isang business entity, ay yung accounting mo up to the nearest centavo. Okay, so now in actual workplace, ano, lalo na kapag gawin nasa accounting department, and then the business entity you are employed in, nabibilang talaga sa isang ano, isang industry, no? Special industry, no? Lalo na kapag yung iyong business entity employer ay subsidiary ng foreign parent company. So talagang ano, it's a comparative presentation of financial information. I mean, yung current year, ano ba yung latest current year na close na libro? 2021. No? Now, the left column is 2020 amounts. So, comparative yon, comparative. Two columns. Yan talaga ang normally required in the presentation of your financial statements. Two columns. Okay, so any question at this point, class? We have only one speaker this afternoon. And there ends the everything about the financial statements. And the next topics related to statement of financial position. Okay, we have only one reporter for today. Do you have any question before again we Okay, Dayan, you may close your hearing. And everybody, open your camera. For another screenshot session, capturing our attractive smiles for yesterday's. Okay, class. You count 1, 2, 3. Teka. Sige.
1, 2, 3, smile. Think po, okay na po.
Okay, we'll wait for the alarm ring. Okay. Okay, class. See you again at 5:30 for another episode ng auditing. Bye-bye.
Thank you po, sir.
Sige po.
Thank you po, sir.